outside of that, 24,000 Palestinian children have lost one or both parents in Israeli attacks, and 18,000 have been injured, with some in critical condition, while 60% of the people of Gaza are facing starvation. Of a truth, it is only those who do not have children that cannot feel the pain of the Palestinian people. I have always believed that a true friend speaks truth to those that they love and those that they care for. And that truth may cause your friend or whoever it is to chart the right and proper course once they have been advised by those that they know, and from the records over the years, has always been their friend, their supporter, and indeed their defender. We've all been brought up in many ways. Those of us that definitely lived, were educated abroad, for example, in the West, to support Israel. And of course, I am a Christian. I'm not just a Christian, a Pentecostal Christian, an evangelical Christian. And we are taught, as you probably know, from birth, about the importance of Israel and the vital role they will play in the end time and how important Israel is to God. So I've always believed that. I've also attended Bible seminary. So you know how I must feel about Israel. And that is why when Israel was attacked in a brutal fashion on October the 7th, the whole world, whether Christian, Muslim, whatever you are, everybody rose up and condemned this heinous action by Hamas, which is a group that I have always condemned, as I've condemned Islamist groups all over the world, including in Nigeria, including other parts of the world. I think it's condemnable. I've never been a supporter of Hamas. I think Hamas is an evil organization, and certainly Hamas is not a friend to humanity. That is my view, and that has always been my view. So when what happened on October the 7th happened, it didn't come as a surprise to many of us, because that's the nature of these people. I'm talking about Hamas. But it happened, and it was barbaric. We'd never seen anything like it, and every right-thinking person in the world surely would condemn such barbarity. Now, one barbarity does not justify another. You asked me why I had to tell the ones I love, the ones I've always believed in and defended the truth. A few weeks later, what we saw unfolding was this, and we were all angry when October 7th took place. We all said all sorts of things. Little did we know that Israel and those that are in charge of Israel didn't just say these things, they actually meant them, and they were going to effect them. And what happened over the next few weeks? We witnessed it on television, live, as they say, where thousands of children, thousands of women, thousands of buildings, thousands of infrastructures, not of Hamas, because babies are not members of Hamas. Women, in the majority, are not members of Hamas. Innocent individuals, including health workers, including World Health Organization workers, including school teachers, including hospital workers, ambulances targeted, hospitals targeted, slaughtered by Israeli bombs. This is what we witnessed day in, day out. And it became very clear that this was not just a question of fighting Hamas or eliminating Hamas, which I think most people are in agreement with. This was an opportunity that presented itself to the extremists in Israel and the extremists amongst the Zionist state and the Jewish right-wing fringe to totally eliminate those people that live in the Gaza Strip and essentially to wipe out the Palestinian race. And that's exactly what I'm seeing here. Now, when I started my series against what was going on in Gaza, a lot of people were surprised, understandably. But as time went by, with what we were seeing on television, every key person that I know, including those that loved Israel at one point or the other, has condemned this. And if you look at what's happening with Western governments at the beginning, they were in total support of Israel. And of course, I'm talking about America, the UK, and a number of others. First to break ranks was France. Then eventually, thankfully, a few days ago, the British also condemned what was going on, or rather said it was too much killing, thankfully. The Germans said the same things. Even Biden's America, said the same thing, that the killing is just too much. We have never seen anything like this, literally in the history of the world, where you can watch the slaughter of women and children wholesale, free of charge, on television from your bedroom, and we're expected to clap for them. Now, to back that up, some of the statements that the Israeli leaders have been making only confirms the fact or the suggestion that they want to eliminate an entire people. This is nothing but genocide. It is nothing but ethnic cleansing. It is nothing but barbarity in its worst form. And I would never support that as a human being, as a Christian and as somebody that knows that God will not allow the killing of innocent people simply because you feel enraged. And that's why I changed. And since that time, I consider it to be as a matter of duty to speak up against what I consider to be evil in this matter. And everything about it is evil. It's not just about what they're doing. It's about what their intentions are. It's about the history of the whole conflict, because I did a lot of research. I went back to the drawing board, and I realized that, okay, why did Hamas behave like this? October, and I'm not justifying that behavior, but October the 7th took place. You can't take it in isolation. These are a people that have been occupied for so many years, for 75 years. They were removed from their land. They were occupied. They were tormented. They were killed. They were slaughtered. They were defeated. People that have no state of their own, women and children, no country of their own. And the whole world literally turned their back on them. Yes, of course, people tried their best. But Israel always had the best of it all. At every point in time, they were the underdogs. And now we're expected to believe that they don't matter. It's okay for us to sit down and watch a whole race being eliminated, being driven into the sea or the desert, or being, as one of the ministers in Israel said, the minister for heritage in Israel said, they should just nuke the whole place, drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza and kill every single Palestinian. This is a civilized world. We want peace, we want decency, we want justice. And if we want peace, if we want justice, then we must give justice to the Palestinian people. And we have constantly called upon Israel to cease fire and stop this nonsense. They did it for 4 days. They continued after that. And now they're even killing their own citizens who are hostages in the hands of Hamas. They're also bombing cemeteries. They're bombing everything in sight. And this is unacceptable. And every right-thinking person ought to speak out against it. I spoke from the heart, and I'm also interested in what you just said about me sitting, if I'm in front of Netanyahu. And you're absolutely right about Golda Meir. She was a wonderful lady. She had compassion, and she certainly would have told off people like Benjamin Netanyahu and put them in their place. Interestingly, I've written a letter, which I'll quote from later, an open letter to the president of Israel. I think I finished it 2 days ago, and it'll be out sometime next week for the public, and I'll publish it. But going to your question now, it's a very good question, an interesting question. See, what's happening here is this. Let me start by telling you that a large number of Jewish people, the more traditional ones, the Torah Jews and so many others, what people call the most conservative form of Judaism, are actually against what Netanyahu is doing, and actually do not believe in this expansionist idea of a greater Israel, where Israel will just simply expand its borders back to biblical days and try to gobble up all the countries around her, literally from Egypt up to Lebanon, up until literally the borders of Iran, which is really what the vision of a greater Israel is, and which is really what some of these people, I think, like Netanyahu, want to do. There is a distinction between Judaism, which is a faith that has suffered for many years, a great faith, a noble faith, with noble people who have been badly treated by the rest of the world for so many hundreds of years, literally thousands of years. There's a distinction between that group of people and the people that are running Israel today. Zionism is a completely different thing to Judaism, totally different. Zionism is a concept that came into being in the late 19th century. I believe the man's name was Hegel. I've forgotten his name. He created it. Herzl, that's it. He created, absolutely. I wrote about it in one of my essays in detail. But he created it. He established it, and he's the one that enunciated it. And what does it mean? Essentially, what Zionism means is this: that as far as they're concerned, the Jewish people are the master race, God's chosen people. Number one. Number two, they're entitled to have not just what they have today as Israel, but literally all the countries around it, to establish what was once the kingdom of Israel under King David, under all the great kings of Israel, and even more than that. Okay, they also believe that they must use politics to enhance the philosophy and the belief of apartheid, the system of apartheid. That is to say, every single non-Jew, every single non-Israeli, every single person that is an Arab, that is a black person, that is not part of them, is not really fit to be treated in a humane and decent manner, and actually are somehow subhuman. Now, you would say to me, well, these people essentially are from that place. Well, listen, let me put this to you, that 2,000 years ago, they were there. The Jews were there. There's no doubt about that. Now, for some reason, they were scattered all over the earth. They went away for 2,000 years. Other people were living in that area for that 2,000 years. Palestine came into being. It became a British colony later. But it came into being, and there were people there, Semitic people, living there. 2,000 years later, you now come back simply because the world Germany killed so many of you. The world treated you so badly. The West collectively felt there was a sense of guilt that they had to find your homeland, a homeland for you to go back to and to live there, okay? To make, to satisfy their own sense of conscience and decency, and also to make up for what the Germans had done to you. They killed 6 million people, and millions of others were killed by non-Germans, okay, throughout the century. So they decided, look, we need to do something for these people. And what happens? Where do we put them? There was a very strong argument. And in fact, the gentleman you mentioned earlier, the first choice that they had was actually Uganda. That, look, let's take them to Uganda. It almost came to that. Uganda in Africa. But ultimately they said, no, let's take them to Israel, where they have roots and they can reclaim the land. And they went there. And when they got there, imagine those that have been there for 2,000 years are now met with people who say, listen, we own this land. You have to get out of this land. We must dominate you. We must overcome you. We must subject you to our will. And we must keep you firmly under us in the name of Zionism, because we are the master race. How do you expect the Palestinians and the Arabs to feel about that? Of course they would resist it. But that's essentially what happened. And now what happened? It was a legitimate aspiration to have a Jewish state. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as they're prepared to live in peace with those who are already there, and we're prepared to tolerate and accept everybody else, just as we expect the Arabs to tolerate them too. But what happens? Zionism would manifest itself in the hearts and minds of those that join parties like the Likud party in Israel, and also the right-wing, extreme right-wing Zionists. And they said, listen, we must take this land. Everybody below us, the Arabs and everybody else are below us, and we must subjugate them. And they entrench what is established is essentially an apartheid state in the Middle East, where the Israelis were the only ones that mattered. Nobody else mattered. Now, let me tell you what is particularly disturbing about this. And I'm about to tell you something which it's in my open letter. I spoke about it extensively there, but it's really something that's lost on a lot of people. Let me tell you this. When you say people are anti-Semitic, what people don't realize is the real Semites, the Semitic people, are the Arabs and the Palestinians that are living there, not the Jews. And look at the leadership of the Jews. Look at the leadership of Israel. Just study it. These people are essentially Europeans that came from Europe, maybe a generation or two ago. They went back there, and they're basically Europeans. All of them, from Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu, to every single one of them. Even as going back as far back as Menachem Begin, and all the rest of Ariel Sharon, they all have a root either in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, or elsewhere. So essentially these people are European Jews, and they are the people that have come to take control of that area, subjugate everybody else, declare themselves as the master race in the name of their faith, and they're now pushing a political agenda to ensure that they are in full control. And of course, they have the full backing, with unconditional backing of America and the majority of the countries in the West. And the reason they're doing that, I will put it to you today, is because essentially they are the same people. The Americans, the Europeans, and the Jews that are leading Israel today are essentially Caucasians who have their roots in old Europe and who want to now have a seat of power in the Middle East to ensure that their will is done and to ensure that everybody else is subjugated and everybody else is held down. And that really is the problem. Now, let me tell you, if I were a Palestinian, I really don't think I'd sit at home and say, well, no, it's okay for you to kill our children. It's okay for you to kill our women. It's okay for you to subjugate us for 75 years and tell us that we don't exist and that we have no right and that we never existed and that we don't have any history. It's okay. I wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say that. If they killed, God forbid, our loved ones, you wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. These people have been subjected to the most horrible form of bondage and subjugation for many, many years. And it's time for the world to wake up, given what we're seeing now, to argue and stand for justice and fairness and a much more balanced approach to this whole matter. As we speak today, Israel feels they can do anything and get away with it. Then they're doing it with total and complete impunity. They're boasting about it. Now, if I may, if you don't mind, can I just read a little portion of this open letter?
Go ahead.
The president of Israel will get this in a matter of days, and it'll be all over the public space in a matter of days. I'll just cut the chase and get to the relevant part to show you the level of damage that these people have done, in case some of your listeners don't fully appreciate it. Now, I've said I've started, but let me get to the paragraphs that are relevant. I said here, your killing spree, I'm talking to him now, Netanyahu. Your killing spree, genocidal binge, murderous disposition, blind rage, and unconscionable desire to wipe out, ethnically cleanse, and totally eliminate the entire Palestinian race has resulted in the mass murder of 26,000 innocent and defenseless Palestinians, which represents over 1% of the entire population of Gaza. 97 journalists, including Samir Abu Daka of Al Jazeera, and 3 Israeli hostages, whilst they were shirtless, begging for help and waving a white flag in Gaza, all in just 2 months. Of the 26,000 Palestinians that have been killed, 10,000 of them were children, and 6,400 of them were women, and no less than 20,000 were above the rubble, whilst over 6,000 of them remain below it. That's 20,000 above, 6,000 below. Outside of that, 24,000 Palestinian children have lost one or both parents in Israeli attacks, and 18,000 have been injured, with some in critical condition, while 60% of the people of Gaza are facing starvation. Of a truth, it is only those who do not have children that cannot feel the pain of the Palestinian people. 300 Palestinian health workers, 134 staffers of the United Nations, and a French foreign ministry official have been killed, and 1.9 million Gazans have been displaced. Hundreds of thousands of them are without food, clean water, and shelter, and 85% of them have been forced to leave their homes. I'm going on. Worse still, 288 Palestinians have been killed in the neighboring occupied bank, whilst 4,700